And on the issue of critical race or critical theory, not critical race theory, critical theory being a baked-in part of early childhood curriculum, and confessed as such, and what critical theory is, Felicity says, at Play Centre, when I explained a rainbow to my grandson, I was quickly shut down by another adult explaining Maori legend. I was a trained Play Centre adult for 6 years, and I observed the systemic replacement of science with legend and gender-neutral ideology. The words girls and boys were unheard. Mm-hmm. And another says, Michael, Fariki, I've been taking notice of this indoctrination from early learning right through to even university, even though I don't have children. It appears to me that parents aren't taking notice or maybe too afraid to call it out. It's very disturbing that our government isn't stamping this out. Yeah, you see, I'm going to get the Associate Minister of Education, who actually is in charge of early childhood education, David Seymour. Now, I would suggest to you that David Seymour is not aware, and won't be aware until we contact him later on today, or Hugh does, that Te Whāriki endorses and is infused by critical theory. And that critical theory is a Marxist framework for looking at the world. Can I say something else about critical theory? Here we go. Here we go. And just so I'm carrying on this because this is important, because we're trying to turn officially our 3 and 4-year-olds into little Marxists. Listen, this is what critical theory is, all right? It's a social, historical, political school of thought. Started with Marx, actually, rooted in Marxist thought, and something called the Frankfurt School in the 1920s, a series of philosophers who decided that they would pick up Marxist communist beliefs and then add psychology and arts and culture to it as well. But it was looking at it through the Marxist lens. All right, just, yeah, here we go. It came out of Europe. France, Germany were the prime places for it. Well, of course, that's where Marx spent much of his time, and certainly in Germany. Anyhow, this is what it does. It centers on analyzing and challenging systemic power relations in society. Okie dokie. So we're not going to teach kids. We're going to analyze and challenge systemic power relations in society. That word challenge. We don't accept that they exist. We're going to challenge them. And it argues that knowledge, truth, and social structures are fundamentally shaped by the power dynamics as between dominant and oppressed groups. So it sees the world as dominant groups and oppressed groups, and the difference about critical theory is it doesn't just say, "Oh, that's the way it is." It explicitly aims to transform society through praxis. What's praxis? Political action and collective action with an explicit socio-political purpose. Critical theory is about revolutionary, and that's the proper word, change. That's its point. It doesn't observe society, it explicitly seeks to change it by direct political action. And it is seeking to expand traditional Marxist analysis, as I said, by incorporating psychology, culture, and philosophy to it as well. It is at the root, as I've just read out, of our early childhood curriculum and confessed as such in a very little segment called Critical Theories. It says, and I'll read this to you again. Te Whāriki, the early childhood curriculum, available in all of, or made explicit in all of our kindergartens and early childhood centres in New Zealand, says this: the use of critical theory perspectives is reflected in the principles of Te Whāriki and in guidance on how to promote equitable practices with children, parents and whānau. So it's not just that they're seeking to change the children and make children part of their political action and their revolution in it, or their sabotage existing society, But it's also parents and whānau that they want to involve in this particular worldview as well, and in the promotion of Marxist thought and belief. Now, that was put in there by the last Labour government and by people within the Ministry of Education. So they wrote Te Whāriki and they put this in there deliberately, and they revised Te Whāriki away from being an educational document about what was into a political and philosophical tool for revolutionary and Marxist revolutionary change. It's still in our early childhood centres now, as I said, on the 12th of August 2025. This government's now been in for almost 2 years. And I would imagine, haven't actually, and I can't imagine that someone from the Ministry of Education wandered into David Seymour's office, because he's Associate Minister of Education with responsibility for early childhood, and said, oh, by the way, I can't imagine anybody did it. The other aspect, as I've said, of Te Whāriki is to support kaupapa Māori theory. Okay, so the idea is, and now you understand, if you like, the Maorification of early childhood. Now you understand why they've been taught about the Maori gods and pantheistic beliefs infiltrating into our kindergartens, into our play centres, etc. Because kaupapa Māori theory is a subsection, if you like, of critical theory. So the idea is, here's critical theory, we're going to change the world. As we look at the world as being oppressed groups, Māori an oppressed group, ta-da, we will then promote Māori to take over because they are the oppressed. And our aim under critical theory is, what is it? It's about revolutionary change. Now, listen, it's a fine for you to discuss these things perhaps and have the debate and argument at a university. But it's extraordinary that that then went to the Ministry of Education. So it exists, you would think, right now. As I talk to you now, within the Ministry of Education, we see the world as the oppressed and oppressors, and we're going to take political action to change it. And we see it through a Marxist lens. All right, that's critical too, very critical. Critical theory is based in Marxism, on Marxism. And then we're going to put it into a curriculum for early childhood, and then we're going to make sure that we mandate that and the funding that goes with it for every 3 and 4-year-old, and look, parents and whānau as well, in every early childhood centre in New Zealand. It is extraordinary. Now you might say, oh, they won't do this. Yes, but they are, which was exactly the point of our conversation yesterday about somebody walking into a kindergarten, checking it out for their own 4-year-old, and discovering that they were teaching about the Maori gods, but they weren't teaching any other, and from a religious perspective. Not from a, this is an interesting legend, there's Tangaroa, god of the sea. No. This God exists, is alive, has a supernatural force, is part of your life, along with all the other Maori gods. This isn't just about the Maorification of early childhood. This is about undermining and sabotaging New Zealand society, capitalism, and also the way in which our society is ordered. Extraordinary that you'd then use 3 and 4-year-olds as your battlefield on which to launch that particular revolution. But it's happening right now.